Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today's Tuesday, March 12th, 2019. Hope everyone had a great weekend. Start off to the work week. Tonight we've got a lot to talk about. Some of the stories I'll cover tonight. I know the storm Gareth is from March 12th, or actually today, but talking about going into Wednesday. But let's get into our space weather news first. Taking a look at our solar wind speeds right now, we're talking about 344.6 kilometers per second with a density of 1.1. And let's go over to thegrandsolarminimum.com where our space weather page is. We'll take a look at KP indices. Are quite low, zero activity whatsoever from AR 2734, sunspot number 11, as that is departing right now on the western limb of our star. Let's go ahead and put this into motion. As we see that coronal hole that was Earth facing, we should feel the effects, if not already, later on. But we do have some active regions showing up on the eastern limb. And just to see how far out that corona is pushed out, just makes me want to take a quick look and see what we've got. Now, it's hard to tell at this point. It's just now breaching the eastern limb. But we will watch that, as this was an area that I thought maybe would not be anything to worry about. But just looking at the eastern limb right now, we do see quite a big active area right there. So we'll keep our eyes on that. Other than that, no other coronal holes to watch right now. As far as earthquake activity, I want to mention this real quick too. And it's unfortunate we didn't go live at some point Sunday, I believe. But we had earthquakes in Japan, Russia, parts of Indonesia, Mari? Like
Indonesia, Alaska.
Alaska.
It was all over the place.
These were 5.0s and higher.
When I woke up in the morning between 7 and, I don't know, 10 maybe, there was like 26 earthquakes or something I counted.
So the
Five and above.
the question is, did that have anything to do with that C-class flare that hit our magnetic field? And I believe it has to. It jolted, in my opinion, from the data that's came in. It had to have done something. It sure rocked Earth, that's for sure. To see that many 5.0 earthquakes that quick, they were all over the place. Plus, we had another one that we didn't mention tonight on the show. But while we're on the subject of earthquakes, we had a 3.1 in southern Alabama. People in the panhandle of Florida felt this. So, indeed, some very rare areas receiving earthquakes. Mandarin, Tennessee, I believe is the name of the city, Mandarin City or something like that. They received a 3.4 earthquake. And that the Kentucky Zoo actually closed. In fact, we covered that. The last time we were live, we covered that the zoo had closed. There was a very large sinkhole that had developed. So some strange, unusual seismic activity in areas that aren't typically prone to it, or used to it, I should say. But as we say goodbye to AR 2734, is it possible that we have AR 2735 just a couple of days away? So the question is, will we see a spotless sun? Is right now, if we go to spaceweather.com, we've had a total of 48 days spotless in 2019. All right, so let's take a look. We've already looked at the back of the sun. Again, that one active region, no big coronal holes at the moment. Our TSI for March 3rd, 2019, came in at 1360.679. So once again, we saw it climb back up into the 0.7 range and then drop back down as low as the low 0.6s. So continue to watch this sporadic TSI readings that we've seen coming in up and down more than usual, but nothing too tragic or anything like that to really be concerned. Just a little bit of accelerated fluctuation, shall we say. All right, let's take a look at our first headline story tonight on Watchers.news. Extremely heavy rain, deadly floods, and landslides hit Sao Paulo, Brazil. State officials said the region received about 7.16 inches of rain in 24 hours on March 11th, which is the equivalent of 80% of the March average. São Bernardo do Campo and Ribeirão Paris recorded over 70% of the March average rainfall in just 24 hours. According to the Sao Paulo Fire Department, at least 12 people have died and 6 have been injured. 4 people died in the city of Ribeirão Pires after their house collapsed. 3 people drowned in the Sao Centeno, and 2 in Santo André, 1 in Sao Bernardo do Campo, and Sao Paulo. A landslide hit Embo das Artes, claiming the life of 1 person. So as you see, around a dozen deaths at this point. Here's some footage here on Watchers.news. Just massive flooding here, folks. And these people probably aren't too comfortable. That water is rising rather quickly. Heavy torrential rainfall. And, to think about it, it's March 12th, all right? And they've already received 80% of their rain for March. Now, it says here, more heavy rain is expected over the region in the days and weeks ahead. So we will probably see 100% of March's average here in the next 24 to 48 hours down there. So we'll keep an eye on this story as we look at the outlook here as far as precipitation that's going to fall. And indeed, it does appear to become a lot more intense into the next several days. This is going all the way out just to March 22nd, and which is another week and a half away still. But look at the numbers that we're looking at, folks. Almost into the 400, centimeters? I apologize for not knowing here off the top of my head. Millimeters. 400 millimeters. So if 182 is 7.16 inches, imagine how much. Hey, it's been a long week for me, folks. All right? Come on, give me a break.
Well, I gotta laugh at you.
Who does things in millimeters anyway? We measure in inches.
The rest of the world.
For the lot. I know, the rest of the world. It's those damn Americans that are the only ones that want to see inches in Fahrenheit. But anyway, we'll leave the link in the description. You guys can read it for yourself. That way you know exactly what you're looking at. Because apparently I don't. Moving on to the next story here. Again, Watchers.news. Storm Gareth hits Iceland, Ireland, and the UK with very heavy rain and strong winds. All right. So this is happening now. Gareth will bring strong winds to many areas, especially parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, Wales, and Scotland, the UK Met Office warns. A yellow wind warning is in effect for parts of the UK for Tuesday and Wednesday, and yellow rain warning for Northern England through midday Tuesday, today. Gusts up to 60 miles per hour are expected across Northern Ireland during the evening rush on March 12th. Gusts up to 75 miles an hour are likely along the northern coast, up to 80 miles an hour for a time, easing gradually through Wednesday morning. The strong northwesterly winds will also affect the southwest Scotland on late Tuesday, that's tonight obviously, spreading across much of England and Wales through tomorrow morning. Met Office Chief Meteorologist Paul Gunderson said that gusts of 50 to 55 miles an hour are likely inland and up to 65 miles per hour along the western coasts. The high winds forecast the West Scotland could lead to more travel disruptions with potential for bridge restrictions in the affected areas, spray on coastal routes. Stein Connolly from Transport Scotland said, travelers should check the latest information before they set off, drive into the conditions, and follow police travel advice. The windy conditions are also likely to lead to disruption on other modes of transportation. So we urge those planning to travel on trains, ferries, and flights to check with their operators to see if their services are affected. It's becoming extremely windy, especially in Ulster and Connacht, with very strong westerly winds extending all parts and reaching gale force in the north and in the northwest with severe and damaging gusts. That was 12:02 local time today. With seas high, there is also a risk of coastal flooding along the Atlantic coast. There will be storms, bright and sunny spells, but occasional heavy showers of rain, hail also with some sleet, mainly over high ground, and a risk of thunder. So about a bag of everything for you folks out there in the UK, Wales, Iceland, Ireland, Northern Ireland. All of you out there will get a piece of just about every type of weather that could be headed your way. It's coming. Said the storm brought extreme winds to parts of southern Iceland late March 11th. Wind gusts between 110 and 130 miles per hour recorded, with the highest gust recorded at 152 miles an hour. We'll leave all the links here at our website, thegrandsolarminimum.com, under tonight's show article. All the links to everything we talk about tonight will go right back over to the original source. If you click on the via CNBC, and I want to talk about this. I'm not going to read this so much, but I know we've covered the AOC situation over and over and over again. There's a revised deal that she's put together, and it doesn't really scale back a lot. She now says instead of she wants to aggressively get rid of carbon dioxide, fossil fuels, in the next 10 years. But she's kind of scaled back, and now she's kind of saying it like she has this understanding that it's going to take time. But we're still going to be aiming for the zero carbon emissions by the next 10 years. But the main thing that stays in the deal is the rebuilding of the infrastructure, ultimately the end of the combustible engine. That's over. And it still seems really unrealistic. We've talked about how the sun and wind blows. The wind blows, the sun shines 10 to 40% of the time. So that makes wind and solar very unreliable. And I was reading along in this article, and they were talking about quickly about solar energy and wind energy, and how the battery to the grid is also a concern, with the fact that, right now these batteries are good for just hours of storage, not days and not weeks. And there's a few links in here, guys. I checked this article out and click on the links. It talks a lot of things. Like, there's a lot of people now who, even on the Democratic side, at first there was a lot of people that were jumping on board with this. Some of the presidential hopefuls, Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker, Warren Elizabeth, whatever her name is, Elizabeth Warren. I don't keep track of Pocahontas, that's what it is. But to me, it seems like her own people are now trying to not talk about this in public anymore, because they know it's unreal. It's not realistic. And the one thing I want to talk about that kind of follows this story, this to me is a little weird, and maybe somebody in the chat can help me understand, and Mari will relay the answer here. But talking about how she's revamped her policy, it's scaled it back a little bit, but it still talks about get rid of cars and all that stuff, no CO2 driven emissions from humans in 10 years, whatnot, just things that are not possible without spending trillions of dollars. And then some. But the whole point of that too is that, man doesn't do anything to stop climate. It's not going to do anything. The impact that man has on climate is not enough to where if we went emissions free, on top of the fact that we're already going into a solar minimum, if man affected climate, then I guess that means we're going to go into an ice age in the next 5 years. If what they believe is true, on top of a solar minimum, man, I don't think people realize that this current CO2 situation is a blanket for what's coming. But anyway, go to this tweet. This really might end up being quote of the year rather than quote of the week. This morning, President Donald Trump tweeted about Dr. Patrick Moore, the co-founder of Greenpeace. He said is creating a firestorm amongst some green organizations. Patrick Moore, co-founder of Greenpeace, this whole climate crisis is not only fake news, it's fake science. There's no climate crisis, there's no weather and climate all around the world. In fact, carbon dioxide is the main building block for all life. Wow, at Fox and Friends. Now, too many of those words were fighting words. Greenpeace has already fired back, obviously upset, but at the same time, they're illustrating just how much of a bunch of liars they are, claiming that Patrick Moore is not a co-founder, was not a co-founder of Greenpeace. He does not represent Greenpeace. He is a paid lobbyist, not an independent source. His statements about AOC and the New Green Deal have nothing to do with our positions. Except here they label him as part of the committee and a co-founder for Greenpeace. So we did catch him in a lie, Greenpeace. But the thing that really confuses me is, does Donald Trump understand what Patrick Moore stands for? And maybe I'm a little confused because I just saw Patrick Moore on, I think it was either Hannity or Tucker Carlson, and it was Tucker Carlson actually, and Patrick Moore broke it down about how AOC wants to get rid of fossil fuels in the future. Okay, so we all know how weak and unreliable solar and wind is. What are we going to do about vehicles that are no longer gas ran, diesel or gasoline? And that goes into what I'm saying about farming. You have to have a strong engine to plow those fields, to harvest those crops. Can an electric engine provide the same torque that a tractor needs to plow its fields, even a muddy field at that? How are we going to keep up with harvesting if the machines won't run long enough to do the work? How weak and anemic are those yields going to be? So Patrick Moore basically painted this picture of, you take away fossil fuels, then you take away abilities like farmers who plow their fields and harvest their crops. And now you're taking away the fuel system away from a truck with a motor that's strong enough to pull 80,000 pounds on diesel fuel. But are we going to be able to come up with the technology to build a semi-truck with a battery strong enough to pull 80,000 pounds in 8 hours non-stop, like we can with the diesel engines? And so he goes on, Patrick Moore does, and explains that now we're seeing anemic crop returns. We're seeing longer delivery times on food, which makes stores run down to what they have on hand. Now you're creating a supply and demand issue. We can't get the foods to the stores fast enough. If it takes longer for food to get to stores, you're facing the possibility of food that might spoil on the way in the delivery. And Patrick Moore continues to talk about how if you take away fossil fuels to not be able to fuel our tractor trailers and our crops, he actually went out there and said people are going to die of starvation because of this. And I sat and thought about it, and I was like, I never really like looking at the gloom and doom of it, but this is truth. So I'm not sure why Patrick Moore is being attacked, and maybe I'm misreading this, but it looks like Trump is not happy with him. And I think if someone, should probably correct the president on this by saying Moore is not an advocate of this Green New Deal. In fact, he was, like I said, he was on Tucker Carlson painting a picture of famine, food shortages. All right, forget about keeping yourself warm and keeping the lights on with solar and wind. You got to think about things like this. Oh, I know. She wants to rebuild the infrastructure of the United States to be able to handle these new technologies. But again, I want to know right now, do we have the technology to build a tractor that runs on solar power that's strong enough to plow hundreds of thousands of acres? Do we have that technology now? Because we can't even come up with the technology for storage for this solar and wind for more than hours, and we need it for weeks and months, not hours. So I hope somebody can tweet this out, try to help correct the president on Mr. Moore a little bit. The whole climate crisis is not only fake news, it's fake science. There's no... I am reading this wrong. It's been a long week, guys. So he was quoting Patrick Moore's... Jesus, I feel like an idiot. I apologize, folks. So basically, Mr. Trump is retweeting, quoting something that Patrick Moore had stated, that the climate crisis is not only fake news, it's fake science. There is no climate crisis. The weather and climate all around the world, in fact, carbon dioxide is the main building block of life. So if Donald Trump is quoting what Patrick Moore is stating, he's definitely not attacking, and I retract my words. And I apologize, folks. I kind of read this one in a hurry before the show started tonight. So, with this being the situation, this is obvious that the presidency here, the Trump administration, is definitely taking the side of people like Moore, people who follow channels like this and others that talk about grand solar minimum, global cooling, food shortages. Not only are we contesting with Mother Nature in her wrath with weather and flooding and temperatures not being warm enough, and then you get these sudden freezes. Now we've got to possibly face a challenge down the road where if this Democratic Congresswoman gets her way, this bill passes, and they start eliminating or not even eliminating, but carbon taxing, gasoline taxes on these farmers who are already right now behind the 8 ball because of the last couple of years of late plants, of flooded fields, of ice and snow still happening in April. I mean, a lot of people did not get their crops in the ground until mid-May, early June last year. So if you've got to worry about the weather delaying your harvest or delaying your plant, now you got to be concerned as a farmer in the future. If you're a farmer and you don't have a new electric engine, so what's going to happen? Are they going to charge like through the roof prices for diesel fuel? Is it going to cost like 8 times more than what it should? And that's your way of motivating that person to change the engine or the technology that he has to run the crops? Think about all the machinery that farmers use that run on diesel fuel. The list it goes on. So I retract my statements previously about Trump attacking. I did not read this correctly. I thought Trump was saying something to Mr. Moore. Obviously, he was quoting him. So this makes me feel a lot better about the whole situation, to see that President Trump is surrounded by people who are keeping him on the up and up when it comes to the climate. So in my mind, the foundation is already in the White House right now that there is going to be a challenge to this whole 97% consensus saying that we are warming and global warming is caused by man. And speaking of that, I want to kind of break away here from what we are doing here. I'll come right back to the rest of this. But when we're talking about warming, this is our El Nino index here, the 3-4 region. This is what we watch to see if El Nino is in season. And here since early December, it's finally got its act together, and it did its preliminary run of 0.5 or higher. And now we're starting to see indications that it's going to go into that 0.8 to 1.2 phase, which is when we know for sure that signature that El Nino is in fact present. Now, 0.8 to 1.2 is not strong. It's moderate, okay, at best. The 0.82 is a weak. The 1.2 is moderate. Now, the reason why I want to bring this up during amidst all this talk about the Green New Deal and Trump supporting what Moore is saying is that there are certain people out there who I think are being pressured to pick a side or to distort their message. I heard a person today explain that the plateau of warming that we're going to see and the whole idea of why we warm was based on the fact that we had a super El Nino in 2015 and 2016. Now, I've talked about this several times. Thanks to TSM Solar Observations, he has also helped me in my understanding what a super El Nino is. So, what a super El Nino is when we see temperatures in this region up here and higher. In other words, a super El Nino, this right here, indicates the 2015 and 2016 supposed super El Nino. So this was the peak that we got in February of 16 at the 0.88 above baseline. Now, the thing that I want to challenge is that this person's criteria of what warms our planet are based on these El Ninos, these super El Ninos. We have shown proof that NOAA themselves they consider a super El Nino as a 2.0 above baseline, okay? In other words, 30 degrees Celsius or higher. And like I said, thanks to the TSM solar observations, he has shown us that we've never hit that. We've never even gotten close to a super El Nino. My point I'm trying to make is that we are now witnessing a moderate El Nino. And this person's claim is that, oop, that's too big. This person's claim is that because of the El Nino of 16, the super El Nino, which is false, based on the criteria that NOAA has set for a super El Nino. But because of this, pumping warm air into the atmosphere, which I'll go along with, caused this temperature spike and has since dropped. Now, here we are, February, and we're talking about a very weak to very slight moderate El Nino. And according to this person, because of this peak, we are on a new plateau of warming temps. So right about where my arrow is, we're going to flatten out. That's where our new warming is going to be because of super El Nino. But what about when we have a weak El Nino? Okay? So if we got that much warming out of a so-called super El Nino, which by the way, it was not super. 1.2 to 1.6 degrees does not consist of a super El Nino. 2.0 or higher is a super El Nino. Was it moderate to strong? Yes, but not a super. So if this El Nino is responsible for, actually the last 2 months have not even changed in temperature. That's how weak this El Nino has been. My question to you is, how can this be the beginning of a new warm plateau? If you're saying that this warm air from this El Nino peaked us, but the next El Nino that we're going through is nowhere that strength. So in my opinion, the warming is not going to be as much as he claims. And this goes, to me, this goes into the same size as the cycle 25, where we are going to go through another cycle before we see the grand solar minimum. In other words, I'm trying to connect the dots here, folks. But cycle 25 will not be warmer by any means. It'll be a normal cycle for us. Normal summers. We'll see some hot heat waves. We'll see some droughts. But nothing extreme, nothing to lead us to another plateau of warming, in my opinion. But based on this information, if an El Nino, a strong one, only caused a 0.9 in rise of temperature, how can a weak El Nino impact and maintain warming at this point? At any point? And I'm not a weather expert. All right, but I'm just trying to make sense of this like you are. And the person that made the claim today is a very brilliant man. He follows the oceans very well. He's one of the better cold weather snow forecasters out there. But I have to disagree with his theory that we are in another plateau of warming. I don't believe we're going to see the planet continue to warm. I believe that when we get out of this minimum and we start into the maximum of cycle 25, I do believe we'll see some brief action. We'll see some warming in some areas like we're experiencing. Nothing major, though. Nothing nowhere near what we had in 2016. And then when we get to the 2030s, well, I think we all know exactly where this squiggly line is heading. So I know that was a lot to throw at you guys, but it kind of related to climate and warming and everything. And I just wanted to make sure that I think that sometimes when you hear people that you trust all the time, and then they come out with a shifty answer like this, that we're on a new plateau of warming because of El Nino. And in my book, if he's agreeing that we had a super El Nino in 15 and 16, then he is trying to feed us that garbage that Noah is trying to feed us right now. And that's disappointing. But based on his logic of why it's warming, again, this El Nino is nowhere near the strength of what we had in 15 and 16. So I don't believe we're going to see global temps go up that much. We might see some slight increases in the summertime, but it's nothing. It's not going to do anything to like raise alerts that the solar minimum has suddenly been canceled and that we're not going to get a cold winter next year. That's not the case. We had a hot summer in most places, and I just did a poll on YouTube before the show yesterday, talking about. I wanted to find out who thought that their winter was either the same as last winter, or was it worse than last winter, or was it about the same? And I was very interested to see everyone's participation. I'm going to go ahead and bring that up here really quick. Here we go. So let's take a look. We've had 259 votes for this winter, and 63% of the people who voted are saying that this was worse than 2018. 22% are saying this was a better winter. And then there's about 16% that says that it stayed about the same. So interesting to see people paying attention, thankfully, and comparing this winter to last winter. Now, where I live now, I've never experienced this kind of winter before. So to me, it's not fair for me to judge. These folks up here in this part of upstate New York are used to this kind of snow, this constant snow and ice. I'm not. I'm used to seeing grass every once in a while. I haven't seen the grass since early January. And it has been frozen or snow on the grass since that long. So it's interesting to see that we are getting a lot of responses saying they had a worse winter this year. And I know this was a vague poll, but I think people understood what they meant by worse. Was it colder? Was it stormier? Did you have more snow? Did you have more ice? And I tell you what, man, this winter has been a bitch. So much ice this year that we've talked about. And even up here at upstate, man, everything just freezes up. It melts a little bit, it gets to the 30s and the 40s, it melts a little bit, and then it reforms as ice at night when it gets down in the 20s and teens, and then you get a cold snap. I mean, this has been, in my mind, I think this has been a winter, a very active winter. But again, so in closing, we might warm a little bit, global temp-wise, but the overall picture is going to show continue cooling as we move out of the summer into the fall and into next winter. And we've been saying this since 16, so I'm going to say it again because it hasn't failed me yet. Next winter will definitely be worse than this winter because we've witnessed it from 16. We've been told that each year is going to get a little bit worse, and it has. 16 was mild. There was a couple storms at the end. 17 was definitely an eye-opener, and 18 was a lot colder and snowier as well, and 19 has definitely given us a little bit of everything. Severe thunderstorms, tornadoes, ice, snow, you name it, windstorms, everything. So it's good to see Trump supporting Mr. Moore here on this, and it's funny to see Greenpeace deny their affiliation with Patrick Moore, who indeed is a co-founder of Greenpeace. And we have the documents here to prove it. So a win for the Trump administration and the rest of us who follow this channel. And for those of you out there who say they don't like Trump and they don't want to hear me talk about it, that's tough, okay? Because right now, he is the key to getting this ship turned around and people seeing the truth about this Green Deal. The more he brings the light to this research, the more picking he does at this so-called consensuous science, the more he's going to unveil the truth about what's going on. And we need to get going as far as preparations for this. We are wasting so much time right now. It almost feels like this is planned, a planned distraction to keep people from progressing and preparing for what is going to happen in the next 10 to 15 years. Especially now. You take notice right now when you see all these precedented storms. Snowstorms, feet of snow across Europe this winter. Unbelievable amount of winter snow in Europe. And then you've had floods all over the world. California, the most recent areas. Alabama, North Carolina. We've seen flooding in the Ohio Valley. It's all over the United States. Oh, and speaking of floods, and all over the United States, let's just go ahead and jump a couple of... quickly, the state of Maine becomes the first to reject a carbon tax. Doesn't surprise me. These guys know how cold it gets. And the thought of somebody shutting down a coal plant or a natural gas plant to stop electricity production and heating, these people know what would happen. They don't want to die. So I wanted to bring that up quickly, that this is a trend as well, because there's other states like Washington. The state of Washington has also failed a bill that would increase carbon taxes. More and more states are jumping on board with, even the ones that are strongly supported by Democrats are now starting to shy away from this whole idea of, let's just hold on. They're not trying to agree with Trump, but they're trying to say, let's just hold on about this whole removing everything in 10 years. Changing the industry, changing the face of our planet. And it's not just the United States. I mean, do you really expect the rest of the world to go for this? Are we going to push for that next? Because we can probably get our population down to about 900 million after that. I'm not playing around. If every country in the world ceased the use of fossil fuels, how would they ever plow their fields? How would they ever deliver the food? How would you keep the food cool in refrigerators if the electricity was constantly going out because of wind and solar being so unreliable that there's no way to keep the power on? Now you've got spoiled food. So on top of crop loss, you have loss of product that rots on the shelf before it even gets sold. Again, this is the reality of a world without any fossil fuels and total reliable on solar and wind. It's not going to happen. And I'm pretty sure the drumbeat's going to get louder about this carbon tax idea, the Green New Deal. On top of the fact that it's going to cost us taxpayers trillions of dollars for multiple years, the fact that she's guaranteeing jobs for all, even those who don't want a job are guaranteed a job. Who's paying for that? Who's paying their salary? That's right. Me and you, taxpayer. It's for another show, I guess. So we were talking about floods, California mainly, and from the Children Just Won't Know What Drought Is department, a few years ago, some genius politicians spurred by some equally genius climate scientists told citizens of California that we are now in a permanent drought situation. Of course, the New York Times bought this drivel and made it a headline. We here at the What's Up With That called bullshit on it, and now we can say told you so with impudence. A mere 1% of the entire state of California is now in a drought situation, according to the U.S. Drought Monitor website. Yeah, 1%. And I remember hearing this guys, I think this chart is being nice. I think it dropped way more than that from March. I could be wrong, but I remember seeing this map bright red and hearing about climate change. This is not going to ever happen. We're going to continue to see more wildfires. So what's going to be the excuse this year if we continue to see the state of California in the non-drought situation, okay, and fire season starts and we have less fires, where's the climate change? Because we're being promised, because of man-made climate change, that we're going to see more forest fires in the future. This is going to continue. So another lie about climate change is being introduced to you tonight, folks. First, you had Al Gore telling people by 13 there would be no ice caps. We all know that's not true. They're stronger than ever. In fact, this year is record growth. If you compare it to the last 5 years, I should say. I shouldn't say record growth, but definitely some drastic freeze up early on in the season for sure. But the point is that climate change keeps changing its narrative. First, it was global warming. Then it's climate change. What's it going to be called next? Up and down weather? It's caused by the humans? Which is it? Do the humans cause the drought, or do the humans cause the floods? What did they do? What complicated spin are you going to give this? And how many times are you going to continue to spin this? I mean, the proof is getting bigger and brighter. Your lies, AGW, you're running out. Again, we were promised no ice caps in 13. That didn't happen. In 2016, we were told we were in a permanent drought. That's a lie. I feel like I should be Maury Povich right now, because there's tons of lies. And the biggest lie is the fact that man has something to do with changing the climate back to normal. So by taking away your dependence of fuel and energy and heat and food to risk changing the planet's climate back. This chart down here at the bottom pretty much says it all. Look what follows after drought season. It's clockwork. Every drought, there is a cooling and wetter period following. Just putting that out there. Thank you, What's Up With That, for this great little tidbit here. We have an update for Winter Storm Omar to become a major blizzard in the Plains states with heavy snow. Let's go to weather.com. Oh, did we not have the link for that one, Mar?
What?
I don't think we do. It's okay. I still love you. All right, so we'll go to weather.com.
What are you looking for?
And checking out this winter storm, major winter storm coming into the plains. Let's go ahead and take a look. So winter storm Omar becomes a heavy blizzard across the plains. Let's take a look. Not really the ads. Sorry about that, folks. At a glance, Omar will intensify the plains Wednesday, producing heavy snow with high winds. Blizzard conditions are expected in parts of the plains where blizzard warnings are posted. Travel conditions will be nearly impossible to the combination of heavy snow and high winds. The Denver metro area will see rain change to snow on Wednesday. Widespread high winds also affect locations not expected to see snow. So once again, we've got this massive low pressure system here in the southwest that's moving across that gave us the severe weather threat. And now we're looking at blizzards in North and South Dakota, parts of Nebraska, parts of Colorado near Denver, and the northeastern part of Colorado. Also, a very small chance for a winter storm for the part of Kansas, northwest Kansas. High wind alert all over the same areas down to the Mexican border. El Paso, Lubbock, Amarillo, you guys are in high wind warnings through tomorrow. And this system is expected to bring severe weather with flooding rains to parts of the central U.S. as well. Here's a look at the timing for Omar, followed by a look at how much snow to expect. Winter storm Omar will reach its peak intensity in the plains on Wednesday as the low pressure system strengthens. The atmospheric pressure in the storm could approach some of the lowest readings on record in Kansas. This low pressure system is massive, by the way, folks. Snow and strong winds will impact the northern and central plains as well as the Rockies. This will include parts of the Interstate 25 corridor in Colorado and Wyoming, including Denver, Cheyenne, and Wyoming. Denver will start out the day with rain before transitioning to snow and increasing winds. Blizzard conditions are likely where the snow and strongest winds overlap the northern and central high plains, gusting to 50 to 70 miles per hour, with blowing and drifting snow. Interstate closures possible, including Interstate 70 in Colorado, far northwestern Interstate Kansas 80, and Nebraska and Wyoming Interstates 90 in western central Dakota. Here's a map of what it's going to look like on Wednesday. Heavy rain across the middle part of the country. Severe weather in Arkansas and eastern Texas going into Louisiana. But heavy snow and blizzard conditions setting up across the northern plains as we move into Thursday. Look at the winds on this storm. Gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour in parts of Texas. Mainly the higher winds are going to be south, but also near Denver, we're also going to see some gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour as well. Here's what we're looking at Thursday. The storm will continue to move through the northern plains and the upper Mississippi Valley into Thursday night. Strong winds will also continue to grip much of the northern and central plains and the Midwest. Now the west, the heaviest totals will be in the higher elevations where a foot or more is likely. Cascades in the part of the Rockies. Lower elevations, northwest interior will also see accumulating snow. So if you look at the totals in the altitudes that are high, of course, we're going to see close to a foot. Looking at the Dakotas and Nebraska, it's possible to see 2 feet. Also possible to see 2 feet of snow in parts of Wyoming as well. So this will be a heavy snow accumulation, and you can see where that swath of heavy snow will be through Thursday. It says here, Winter Storm Omar was named on the afternoon of March 11th when the expectation that the aerial criterion, that is 400,000 square kilometers under winter storm warnings, would be met in the following days. So that's how we get these named storms, 400 square kilometers of winter storm warnings, and then it's officially a winter storm name. That's a pretty big storm. And we'll take a look at our GFS long-term outlook and find out what we're going to be looking at here in the next few days. There is the low pressure system right here. This is for tomorrow, late night tonight. Lots of heavy moisture coming from this storm, but boy, does it really kick up overnight into daybreak. And that is some tight isobars. So definitely expecting high winds. On one side, we're getting heavy snow. In the middle, we've got a war going on with the ice and then heavy rain on the eastern side of, of Nebraska and parts of South Dakota. Southern parts of Oklahoma also seeing heavy rain. And as this storm moves right along, the threat for severe weather, it kind of revamps again in the Tennessee Valley and the northern Mississippi area. Look at all this snow back here behind it. The isobar is still pretty tight, but this system pretty much expands out, and that ridging that we're seeing here with the warmer weather moving into northeast takes this storm into odd shape, pushes the snow way up into Canada, and by the weekend, Friday, March 15th, this storm will be off the East Coast. Again, northern, northeastern parts and eastern parts will see rain. Also, we will see warm-up in temps. And I want to talk about that real quick because I know a lot of you are excited about getting rid of some of these cold temps. But let's take a look and see where we are at. We are flirting with, look at this, on Thursday, we are flirting with 70s in the Ohio Valley, mid-50s in Pennsylvania. Upstate New York could see mid-50s on Thursday. That is 2 days from now. Hard to believe after all this cold that we've experienced. And then on Friday, we're experiencing temperatures close to 60 degrees before another cold front is right behind it and sweeps in for more cold air. Again, not as cold, but this system in Canada is pushing as far south as it possibly can. Again, we're seeing average temperatures, nothing too crazy here, going into late March. Some really cold weather in Canada trying to make its way into the United States by the end of March. Now, there is some concern, and the GFS is not showing it yet. But March 20th, the day before spring, we are looking at a possible situation where temperatures will be cold enough for what may be the possibility of one more snow system hitting the east, the northeast. Monday, a chance in the mid-Atlantic states. And then we're kind of watching this low pressure system here that moves in the northeast on March 21st. But the GFS right now, it really has it dissipating. And so there's a lot of people who think that we might see a big snowstorm on the 20th 21st, possibly the 18th through the 21st. That's the GFS right now is not showing that. And of course, the GFS is the last model you really want to look at. They don't really do a great job at that. Now, another model that's kind of fantasy land sometimes is the CMC. And let's see if we've got anything. And they're really not showing anything either. March 18th through the 19th, high pressure is dominating. Now, there is the hugger right there. So this low pressure system, I think for this to really come to fruition, is that we're going to have to see that low pressure system ride up the coast. And there should be some kind of indication that there is high pressure that's going to block this storm and keep it on the coast. And there is slight indication at this point right now. It's too far out, but there is slight indication where there could be some high pressure action up there in the Greenland block situation, and this storm tries to catch fire and rake the coast. Now there's colder air in the northeast, so this would be winter's last hurrah. But right now, I think we're reaching to expect anything like that in the near future. Let's see, what else? This one right here is Fantasyland too. I'll go ahead and get back into the continental U.S. This is March 21st. Again, this system is staying way too far south. I don't think it has a chance of skimming the northeast like once expected. And honestly, folks, when we get to the 27th of March, temperatures are trying to level out in the 40s and 50s for much of the area. So we may be just about finished with Old Man Winter. Now, his cold and annoyingness will still be around. I'm not saying it's going to get warm anytime soon. We're still going to have cold weather enough to see snow in the northern plains and the northwest. I mean, this is March 27th. We've got another massive system that's going to come out of the southwest again and almost go in the same path as Omar is going right now. So there's a chance for another blizzard across the center part of the United States starting on March 25th. And if we go back in time to what we're looking at right now, this current winter storm began in the same region. So hold on to your hats, folks. 10 days from this, we're looking at another storm almost exactly the same spots where it hit already. So it'll be interesting to see where we are temperature-wise. It'll be interesting to see how far we have progressed as far as are we getting closer to spring, or is it going to get a little bit colder? I think we're going to see a little bit cold after the 15th, close to the end of the month, but there could be some improvement by the second week of April. We start seeing 50s and 60s widespread in the northeast, and hopefully the snow starts winding down as well. But right now, these models are showing us that Old Man Winter is definitely still trying to do something. Here's March 28th, and there is a mix of precipitation hitting in the northeast that weekend as well. So again, Old Man Winter is definitely going to be here for the next several weeks. We could see it into the first week of April at this point. But I do see some good news on the horizon. It does look like temperatures after March are trying to reach spring-like readings, which, that's typical. Take a look at our El Nino temperatures one more time. We are at 0.842 above baseline. Again, we are at a very moderate El Nino right now at best. That cold air is starting to retreat. And that snow line is also starting to retreat. But again, we're facing a different angle of the sun. It's going to be spring here, March 21st. So this does not surprise me. But still quite a bit of ice and snow in the northern hemisphere at this point. All right, so Mari, I was wanting to know, did you have anything to report for us tonight?
I did. Let me hop over. You know how I like to say hi to people in the chat, Jake. And I was in the background making fun of you, but you know what? You've worked all day and you're tired and you come home and you put that all together with not a lot of time. You're doing great, Jake.
I know.
You're always complimenting me, but I just want to compliment you. Okay, so we were talking in the chat about many different things. One of the things that concerns me is our view counts on YouTube and how restricted we've been. We're getting reports now. Carlton said he can confirm YouTube's not even suggesting our videos anymore. People are getting unsubbed from our channel, and also people are not getting notified, which is, it's so frustrating. Because some of these videos, like the tornado and the worldwide flood, I spent hours putting the stuff together, and it's not getting out there to the public. It's not being seen. It's very, very frustrating. And I am so upset to hear that Kate Hart's channel has been shut down on YouTube. I just can't even believe it. Like,
well, I'll tell you what happened, and this is unfortunate, but she interviewed a certain channel from YouTube.
Oh, really?
Not too long ago. Yeah, about a week ago.
I have not heard this.
I think you know who I'm talking about.
No, I don't. You'll have to fill me in.
I will, but I really believe that had something to do with it. There's a lot of people out there who are tired of sensationalism, and unfortunately, this is part of the bullcrap that we have to face in this community.
So this is trolling activity.
I believe this is trolling activity 100%.
It's just sad. So she has another channel. I'll post the link. I'm not sure what's going on.
Sorry to hear this, Kate. I was not aware.
She's so sweet, and she has a lot of great gardening tips, so it makes me sad to hear that. I just hate seeing that big old red bar across her channel where it should be. It's shocking.
Unreal. She had around 2,500 subs. That's a pretty good following, you know.
I'm sad for her, and I'm glad to see that she isn't, given up, and she's started again, and she's going to keep on doing it. So good for her.
And a little bit of advice, unfortunately, I think this has something to do with some of the people that you associate. People get so bent out of shape that this, in my opinion, Kate, of all people on YouTube, does nothing controversial, nothing but educational videos about gardening and preparing people. There is nothing about this woman that is deceptive.
She's just sweet. She covers a lot of C60 and nutritional, natural health stuff, lots of gardening tips. She's just sweet, and it just makes me sad. So I will post her link in the chat so you guys can sub her. I'd like to thank Zero Tolerance for the super chat. He put cow fart powered farm equipment. Problem solved, AOC.
There you go.
And he drops the mic and walks out of the chat. Boom. All right, that was beautiful. So that's all I got, Jake. I didn't really get into it, writing the names and all that stuff. And I just there's our YouTubers, our people in the GSM community, the channels. There's a lot of work and effort being done into research, whether you're on Twitter like Starman, writing blogs and articles like him, or me putting together videos, or Jake going over all these different articles with everyone. It takes a lot of work, and definitely support these channels. It's just as simple as liking and sharing, really, because we're being restricted. There's no reason some of these videos are not getting out there. Even on Facebook, we're being censored. It's obnoxious.
Every show we do, we provide links so you can look these up on reputable websites and news stories that are real. So, in my opinion, Google and YouTube apparently are not ready for the full disclosure of what's really happening, because they know there's a lot of money at stake that could be lost if the truth gets out right now. Let's just say the ducks are not put in a row yet for them to be ready for the truth. That's my opinion. I think that's why we continue to get censored.
And the link for all the links for all the articles that Jake discusses is put together nice and neatly on our website, thegrandsolarminimum.com. The link is in the description as well. That's all I got, Jake.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. We're going to shoot for Thursday night for another broadcast with you guys, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, when we get another chance of giving you a Grand Solar Minimum news update. Until then, guys, we'll talk soon.